So, can you really build muscle after cancer? Let's dive deep into this study and see what this study found out. So, this was done in breast cancer survivors. It was a randomized control trial, so that's really good. And it's looking at weightlifting and appendicular skeletal muscle mass. So, basically, it's saying that muscle mass in your arms and legs. Now, I don't know who Justin Brown is, Catherine Smith. She's a very well known exercise, very well known in the exercise oncology space. She does a lot of great research from the exercise oncology. I got to meet her, work with her when I used to do studies with the University of Yale and the University of Miami. I actually worked with her, not like one on one with her, but we were in this big, massive study where she ran her own studies, we did ours, and then we essentially shared the data, right? So she would have no idea who I am, but I did get to, at least virtually meet her, and I think I got to meet her wife as well. I don't remember. But anyways, the purpose of the study, let's dive deep into it. As always, I don't look at the abstract. I'll glimpse at it just to see if this is a study I want to review or not. But I didn't really dive deep into the details. This is my first time seeing it as well as you. In fact, I don't even remember what year this was made. But let's dive deep. All right. So the median age at diagnosis for breast cancer is 61. I believe now it's getting younger. I don't know what the age is off the top of my head. When this study was done, actually, let me go up just so I can see what year this study was done to make sure that I'm. So this is a. My computer is lagging here. Oh my goodness. 2015. Okay, so this is 10 years old. So in 2015, the average age for a diagnosis for a breast cancer survivor was 61. Now it's 2026. I believe it's actually a little bit lower these days. But quick chat GPT will let us know what that is, though. Now, the 5 year survival rate for non metastatic cancer is above 84%, which I believe that's actually a little bit better nowadays, if not the same. So I believe now it's like 95% 5 year survival rate. I don't know if I'm 100% on that specific number, but I believe it's in the 90s nowadays. Older age diagnosis and promising long term survival rates have created a population of breast cancer survivors that will experience unfavorable alterations in body composition as a result of aging and cancer treatment. Basically, it's saying that even though we're able to fight off the cancer, because people are able to live after the cancer, they now have to live with the consequences of the treatment and the consequences of the cancer. So more and more people have to deal with the side effects of cancer treatment, which is the reason why I started my, you know, practice of oncology, because my goal is to help reduce a lot of these burdens for cancer survivors. And when I worked at the hospital, I got to see the impact it had. So this is really why I got into it. Now, an important change in body composition related to aging and cancer treatment is the loss of skeletal muscle. Perhaps the most important skeletal muscles are those of the arms and legs, especially your legs. Your legs, if you have strong enough legs or more muscle mass in your legs, you have a better 5 year survival. You have less side effects. It's associated with a better long term health. It's associated with not being put into a nursing home. Skeletal muscle in your legs is very important for independent living. Anyways, so skeletal muscle is known as appendicular skeletal muscle mass, which accounts for greater than 75% of total skeletal muscle mass in the body and are necessary for ambulatory activity and physical functioning, which is essentially what I said. They just said it in a more clinical term and scientific way. After the age of 35 to 45, women lose approximately zero point 0.1 kilogram or 0.5% of appendicular skeletal muscle mass. So after the age of 35 to 45, it really depends on how active somebody is, but they lose about half of a percentage of their muscle mass in their arms and legs. Essentially what that means is, as you get older, your risk of disease increases because you have lower muscle mass. Your risk of needing a nursing home, your risk of not being able to have independent living, of not being able to pick up your grandkids in the future, increases as you get older, especially after the age of 35. Now, this may be relevant to breast cancer survivors because They have it as ASMM, which is appendicular skeletal muscle mass. I'm just gonna say muscle mass because that's way too much to be seen, is associated with dysregulated insulin axis hormones. So the lower the muscle mass, the more it disrupts or it affects your insulin, your insulin sensitivity, which lower insulin sensitivity means more risk of a second cancer, but it also means more risk of diabetes and other associated diseases like heart disease, for example. Low muscle mass is associated with the all-cause mortality among breast cancer survivors. So the less muscle you have, the more risk of earlier death. Essentially, is what it's saying. It's also associated with frailty, and if you have a higher risk of frailty, you also have a higher risk of falling and breaking a bone. And then breaking a bone could lead to earlier mortality, is what they're saying, or that's what it is actually. Disability. And low bone mineral density, which is extremely important to strengthen after breast cancer treatment and prostate too. But we're talking about breast cancer survivors here. Now, these observational data suggest that interventions which attenuate the loss of muscle mass may hold clinical importance for breast cancer survivors. It is unknown if lifestyle interventions such as weightlifting preserves muscle mass among breast cancer survivors. So what they're looking at is, does weightlifting help you maintain muscle mass on your arms and legs? We tested the hypothesis that slowly progressive weight training attenuates the decline of muscle mass among breast cancer survivors by conducting a post hoc analysis of data from the physical activity and lymphedema trial. The PAL trial was randomized controlled trial designed to examine the safety of weightlifting among non-metastatic breast cancer survivors who with or at risk for developing breast cancer lymphedema. Oh, this is interesting. So whenever you have large cancer, not cancer institutes, whenever you have like big time researchers, what they'll do is they'll run one big trial. So in this case, it's the PAL trial, and it's basically physical activity and lymphedema and how they're related. And then from that study, they have a bunch of different variables that they can look at. And then they run just a bunch of different stats to see what the different variables can cause and what they found. That's how they're able to produce and mass produce so many studies, is because they just kind of run stats on a cohort or a data that say that they already have. So from this data set, it's basically non-metastatic breast cancer survivors who either had lymphedema or were at risk for lymphedema. I actually did a whole review on the one where it's at risk for developing lymphedema, which is a study that looks at, does weightlifting cause lymphedema in women at risk for lymphedema? The answer to that is in that study and in that review that I did. So check that out. I'll add the link to it at the bottom of the description or after the video, so you can check that one out as well. Very interesting study. I really liked how they did it. And I go over a couple different exercises that you can do within that, and that you also included in that study. Now, with this study, like I mentioned earlier, they essentially just ran the data to see if it actually helped maintain muscle mass. So it looks like they're only looking at maintaining muscle mass, not increasing muscle mass, which is interesting. Let me come back to the abstract. I normally don't do this in my review videos, but I find that very interesting that they did that. So let's see here. We conducted a single-blinded randomized control trials of twice weekly slowly progressive weight training and standard care among 200 non-metastatic breast cancer survivors, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So basically they did a baseline DEXA to see their muscle mass. And then they did a DEXA again after 12 months. So after a year of weightlifting, they did another DEXA. I'm curious. The reason I say that's interesting, that they looked at maintain muscle mass and not gain muscle mass, is because I'm assuming that they already knew that the women did not increase muscle mass. So therefore, they just said, we're looking at maintaining muscle mass. That is a big assumption here. I'm not in these research trials. Technically, that's kind of like bad thing that I'm saying, because they already knew the results, but it happens. Sometimes you can't really control it, because you already know the results, right? You've already looked at these variables, but they create another study so that way they can publish some more. Now, anyways, and for the study design, once again, the actual cohort exercised for a whole year, and they were looking to see if exercising, weightlifting, increases risk of lymphedema. That exercise cohort was not trying to build muscle mass. They just ran that separately, and they're like, "Hey, by the way, did this increase muscle mass at all?" But it wasn't. That was not a muscle building protocol. So, and then they ran one with people. They did basically two studies, one looking at people to see if it increases risk of lymphedema, and the other one was like, hey, if you're at high risk, does weightlifting cause lymphedema essentially? Um, but the reason I say that is because I want to clarify these were not muscle building protocols. Participants were eligible for the study if they were breast cancer survivors between 1 and 15 years post diagnosis, free from cancer at study entry. Oh, so these were women who were actually already finished with treatments. They had more than one lymph node removed and no medical conditions, so like no heart disease or anything like that would stop them from exercise. Um, they're between 1 and 15 years post diagnosis, so that means that there could be a certain percentage of women in this study who were actually taking some form of hormone therapy, but they were just out of chemotherapy. Generally speaking, in the oncology space, when you say out of treatment, you actually just mean, chemo in general, chemo and radiation, generally speaking, not all the time. Additionally, they included women who were less than 50 kg meter squared. No plans for surgery during the study. No history of bilateral lymph node removal. No weightlifting in previous years. Stable body weights. And we're not trying to lose weight. Okay. So they weren't trying to lose weight, which is important because that would affect muscle mass. If you lose weight, it's going to make gaining muscle really, really hard. But if you lose weight, even if you're weightlifting, you might actually lose a little bit of muscle if you're depending on how much of a deficit you're in. So that would be a confounding variable. So they took that out, which is incredible, really, really good. And then no weightlifting experience in the previous year, which is really good as well, especially for this study, because if you've never weightlifted before and you start weightlifting, your odds of building muscle are a lot higher. So that's fantastic. Anyways, this was a good cohort group of women to be doing this study with. Now, whether the exercise itself was good, that's a whole different conversation. They talk about the lymphedema here. The study participants were randomized into a weightlifting group or a control group. They worked out for a full year, mind you, at a fitness center. They had someone who was helping them safely complete the exercise in small groups of 2 to 6 participants. They worked with the exercise professional, mind you, and each session lasted twice a week for 90 minutes. That's insane. That is insane. 90-minute sessions. That's crazy. I'm assuming because they did some education with that too. But like, for example, you're doing twice a week. That's 180 minutes a week, right? That's quite a bit of time to be exercising and getting some education. So for example, for my online coaching clients, I give them their workouts are about 30 minutes. If they are someone who's more experienced, it's about 45 minutes. If there's somebody who's more experienced. But generally speaking, I would say 80 to 90% of people in my online coaching, they just work out for 30 minutes. Now they might get a 10-minute warm up here and there, but the workout itself is just 30 minutes for my online coaching clients, right? And then the educational piece, they receive that throughout the week from me via email. So I show them exactly, what weights to use, what sets, how I want them to do each exercise. Everything is all done via email, so that way they know what to do. Anyways, let's go back to this. Each session included stretching of all major muscle groups, cardiovascular warm up, abdominal, And lower back strengthening exercises and weightlifting exercises. Great. Weightlifting exercises for the upper body included. Okay, perfect. Let's see. Dumbbell press. Good. Dumbbells are going to be better for building muscle because you can get better range of motion. Seated row. Okay. It depends on the type of seated row. If it's the one that's a cable, not the best for building muscle. Good for building coordination and strength. If it's a machine seated row, much better. So a machine seated row for building muscle better than a cable row for building muscle. Lateral and front raises. Good. I mean, they're nice accessory movements. I would have liked a different exercise than a front raise, to be honest. For a muscle building protocol, the lateral raise is absolutely fine. Bicep curls, absolutely fine. And tricep extensions. So right now, from viewing this protocol, I can tell you this is not a muscle building protocol at all. The best exercise in here is a dumbbell press and seated row, maybe lateral raises, front raises. Oh, so they had or front raises. Yeah, this is not a muscle building protocol at all. Um, how I would change it. So this is what I do for my online clients. Uh, I change their dumbbell presses. So if they're doing for a year, there's 4 variations that I want them to focus on within a year. There is a flat bench dumbbell press, right? An incline bench dumbbell press, chest fly flat, and then a chest fly incline. And they are alternating those forms of dumbbell presses throughout the year. Now, if they are somebody who's a lot stronger, they have access to barbells, then I include barbells for them instead of the flies. For the seated row, I actually have them do one arm dumbbell rows supported because those are much better, or machines seated rows, which are going to by far exceed doing a cable row. Once again, I don't know because they don't preface whether it's a machine or not. But if it is a machine, then that would be superior here in this case. So what I would change is keep this, make sure that this is a machine. Now you have 2. It looks like they included upper body, included these exercises. Okay. And then these are fine for your accessory movements, your bicep curl, tricep extension. I would just superset those. I would have your front cable raises and lateral raises, not or. Now, weightlifting exercises for lower body included the leg press, back extension. Leg press, I hate the leg press with a passion. We'll stand on that hill to the end of the day. The leg press is a terrible exercise. I hate it. It's very hard to get into. You can't get a good range of motion. Most people's hips will hurt. You can't go that heavy. It's just very uncomfortable. I don't like it. There's way better variations than a leg press to build muscle. Back extension, okay exercise. To be honest, I don't really know why they included a back extension other than for health purposes because they're not looking at back extensors. They're looking at glutes. So I would have liked a different exercise than a back extension here that will focus more on glutes and a much better exercise than a back extension for the legs. Leg extensions, good exercise for building muscle, and leg curl, good exercise for building muscle. I take this crap out. This is a terrible exercise, leg press. I would probably change that into some form of a Smith machine squat or do a what's it called? The 45-degree leg press. Much, much better than this. Because since you're laying down, or a hack squat would have been great too. They focus a lot more on the quads than anything else. My mouse does not seem to be working here. Back extension, take that out. I would have probably included some form of Romanian deadlift. Maybe even did a split squat here Some form of a Bulgarian, some form of a lunge would have been better. Even a high step up would have been better than a back extension. And then keep your leg extension and leg curl absolutely fine. As an accessory, I would have included calf raises just because you're looking at specifically in this study appendicular, so meaning your legs. Now, I'm giving all this critique, but mind you, what they did was, hey, we ran this study over here looking at lymphedema and just general weightlifting. Let's see if it built any muscle. That's what they did. They're not creating an exercise program for muscle building. The reason I'm going down into this deeper is so that way you're not committing these same mistakes and just using these exercises and thinking it's going to help you build muscle. 1 to 3, anyways, I'm going to continue. Now, 1 to 3 new weightlifting exercises were taught at each session. For each session, 3 sets of weightlifting exercises were performed using 10 repetitions per set. Okay. For each exercise, weightlifting was increased by the smallest possible increment after 2 sessions, at which 3 sets of 10 reps could be performed without concurring changes in arms and hand symptoms. No maximal upper limit was placed on the weightlifting. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Essentially, what you want to do is, I made a whole video on this as well on my channel. I talk about exactly how I want you to progress with your programming. And it's once you can get the same amount of reps, same amount of sets, then you increase the weights. For upper body, I like to see the smallest increment being about 2 pounds. For lower body, I like to see about 5 pounds. Because there's no reason why you should be going up 1 or 2 pounds with your lower body. All right, after 13 weeks of supervised weightlifting, participants were instructed to continue unsupervised weightlifting for 39 weeks, adhering to the same exercise prescription used. Weightlifting adherence was defined as attending the weightlifting sessions at the community fitness center, using logs. So they use logs to verify accuracy. Exercise professionals contacted the study participants in case they missed, blah, blah, blah. So they did that for a full year. So essentially what this shows is that once you know how to properly lift weights, you can go about it on your own as long as you know exactly what to do, how your body feels. And that's essentially what I do for my clients. I want to make sure that they know how to properly lift, what exercises to do, how to safely exercise, how to adjust their programming. And once they, feel more comfortable, then they go out and do it on their own, right? They do it at home or at the gym. In this case, they were doing it at the gym. For me, whatever my participant has or my clients have accessible to them, I just create the programming according to that. They're just talking about lymphedema now. How they measured it and things like that. Okay, so let's go here. Demographic characteristics including age, cancer treatment. I want to see I'm actually looking for their just some nice graphs or charts is what I want. Muscular strength was quantified using 1 rep max test with bench, leg press, and hand grip exercises. 1 rep max testing is the maximum amount of weight that they can lift for one time. Participants completed a warm-up set for 4 to 6 reps using a weight of 2.2 kilograms on the bench press and 18 kilograms on the leg press. So 2.25, that's about 5 pounds on the bench press, and 18 kilograms, my goodness, that's 40 pounds on the leg press. And then they use the RPE scale of 1 to 10 to see how fatigued or how tired they are. Additional weight was added until exercise biomechanics. Oh, okay. Basically, they're just explaining the test that they did. That's pretty standard there. They did a DEXA, which is the gold standard or one of the best measurements of seeing your muscle mass and body fat percentage, as well as your bone mineral density. So you can get a lot of great variables from a DEXA scan. I don't normally require my online coaching clients to get a DEXA, but I do have several of them who do have access to one, and they will get them. So when I can see that, I do like to see that. All right. I wish I could just get the graphs on here, man. What? I don't want to read all this. Okay, so participants who did not have 12 a month DEXA scan were more likely to be younger, have greater hand grip strength, have higher relative muscle mass, and have higher absolute muscle mass. Among the subset of participants who did not have a 12 months, so there was no between group differences. Okay. Where's the graph? I just want a graph. These are the results, but I hate reading all of this because there's just a bunch of numbers, negative 0.1 plus or minus, and then you got the standard deviation and all these little things. It just makes my life easier when I can just see graphs. All right, before I go into the discussion, let me see if they got a graph down here somewhere or a chart. Okay, here's the first chart. Here's the second one. Beautiful. This is what we want. Okay, good. You know when they say a picture's worth 1,000 words? Yeah, they meant a graph. Okay, anyways. So relative appendicular skeletal muscle mass. So you have your control group, and then you have your weightlifting group. So basically, the control group did not lift weights at all. And what they found was that the control group, if you did not lift weights after breast cancer treatment for a full year, your muscle mass decreased after a year. Wow, so pretty significantly, actually. And then if you lifted weights, you actually maintained muscle mass. Okay. Which is pretty impressive. Okay, they maintain muscle mass. So remember, whenever you maintain something, you're actually fighting the loss of it. So, as an example, let's say that you lose 1 pound of muscle, as an example. Well, if you maintain at the end of the year, then that technically means that you gained 1 pound of muscle because it's fighting the loss that you would have expected to see. So, yes, they maintained, but technically they maintained because they gained instead of losing that amount. And that gain is what equaled the maintenance. Now, most women in this study were 55 years old. Good. Am I seeing this correctly? 32% were white, 61% were black. Wow, look at this study. Way to represent diversity. Nice. You go. That's incredible. That's very rare to see. Normally we see like 92% white and then whatever the rest of the numbers is other. Okay. You got a couple little bit here of smoke history, which is fine. 40% of women reported that their health was good. Interesting. I always find that to be interesting. Okay, so less than 1% had stage 0. Majority of the women, it looks like about 47% were stage 1. 30% was stage 3. 48% had lymphedema. So these are women, about half the cohort actually had lymphedema. 78% had chemotherapy. 80% had radiation. 20% were on tamoxifen. And that's pretty much it. At least for the stuff that I care about. Less than 1% were on an aromatase inhibitor. Okay. So that's interesting, actually. Well, I guess that makes sense because most of them were stage, what is this? Stage 1 or so. So, find that interesting. Okay. So, let's see here. Strength and baseline. So, at baseline, both women lifted about the same amount of weight. There was no difference in terms of strength when they first did the study. But by the end of the study, the women who lifted weights increased their strength. So it looks like so this is the baseline change. So it actually looks like the women who weightlifted increased their strength by about, what is this in kilograms? 10 pounds. Maybe more. Let's go 12 pounds. Okay. 10 to 12 pounds to be safe. And then that's for the bench press. And then the women who lifted weights for their leg press, wow, that's pretty significant. They increased their leg press by 21 kilograms, almost 22 kilograms. So that's almost 50 pounds. Pretty significant on the leg press. So their strength increased really, really well on their legs. Upper body was decent. And then hand grip strength increased as well. So this is actually interesting to see because the control group for upper body did not change. For the lower body, it looked like it increased by 8 pounds for the lower body. And then for the hand grip, their strength also increased. Now, even though there is a change, so for example, so right here, what I'm seeing is there's a baseline change. So we are almost 99% positive that these results happen because of weightlifting, essentially. For the women who did lift weights. For the women who did not lift weights, I think it's just because I think this increase that we see is not significant. So even though it looks like there is a slight increase, I think that would be non-significant increase. I'm not 100% sure on that. Because, for example, for the control group, for the legs, they increased 3.8 kilograms, which is about 8 pounds. After a year, it's very small, even after not weightlifting. But they did increase. And then the control group for their hand grip strength increased 1 kg, which that would not be significant. That could be easily done by error in testing. And then the control group, I would probably say that could also be done by an error in testing. But that's what's the word I'm looking for? Speculating right there, because they didn't really give more details on that to know whether it is or isn't. Okay. So now let's see what that study actually looked at. So remember, the purpose of the study was to look at, did weightlifting maintain muscle mass after a year of weightlifting? So the weightlifting group, I'll tell you this thing so baseline, delta change. I wish they had the baseline, the post, and then the change, because that would make my life so much easier. And then they had the difference, like how significant this number is. Instead, they cut all that. And that's a little annoying on my end. I'm not gonna lie. Because then I could just see good and clear data and all the data on everything. But this is okay too. So the weightlifting group did not lose any muscle. The control group, comparatively to where they started, did not seem to lose any muscle either. I mean, 0.01. Okay. Yeah, they did not seem to lose any muscle relative to their body mass. Now, absolutely, meaning just like that limb essentially. The weightlifting group did not lose any muscle, not significantly as well. And the control group lost muscle. Almost, would that be 10 times? Maybe 10 times more than the weightlifting group here, whatever this difference is. Now, for their body mass, BMI, their BMI did not change much. So it looks like they did not lose any weight, which I'm curious to see if that's actually true. Or at least much weight, not enough that it would change their BMI. Normally, you need a pretty significant weight loss to change BMI. Total body mass kilograms. Okay, so total body kilograms. They started at 79. They had almost 1 kilogram change. Okay. So it was not significant. And then body fat percentage. The weightlifting group lost um once again these numbers, this is a percentage. It's not that big of a difference actually. There was no significant difference. I just realized that. Sometimes I try to make sense of these numbers, but then I forget to look at the p-value and it shows that there's not a significant difference. So there's not a significant difference from their starting point to their end point. So for body mass index, there was no difference for their BMI. There was no difference for their total body mass at the start and at the end. There was no difference for body fat percentage lost. And there was no difference for body fat in kilograms. So they did not lose. The weightlifting program did not look like it changed their body fat. It did look like it changed their how much muscle mass they lost, which does seem to be at least statistically significant in the study. Now that I've looked at these things, now we can look at the results in the discussion to see what they actually said. Um, So, because to me, from the variables that I was given, it does not look like these results were honestly that significant to me. And what I mean by that is they don't look like they were um, clinically significant. So they don't look like they actually made that much of a difference in terms of building muscle and losing fat. Like you're fighting for decimal points here because of how small the change was. That's what it looks like to me, at least. So let's see what the researchers actually said. Which, to be honest, it's a little expected because it wasn't really a muscle building protocol. This was just that type of protocol is honestly, let me get people exercising. Here's some exercises to do. That's what that protocol is. And it's a pretty standard protocol in research studies, by the way, which is one of my biggest critiques on it. Anyways, so they ran these analyses. Women begin to lose approximately, you know what it said, about 0.5% of their muscle mass. And treatment in breast cancer makes that faster. It is noteworthy that the decline in muscle mass in the control group of the study over 12 months was 0.22. Okay, so this is great. So you would expect, so I could have been wrong with what I said earlier. So I'm really glad that I read this. So you'd expect the average person to lose. Let me actually put the numbers on this so that way you can make it into pounds because this is really annoying me. 0.22 kilograms is half a pound. Perfect. So you would expect to lose about a quarter of a pound. Let me just make sure that's correct. 0.1 kilograms Yeah, you would expect to lose about a quarter of a pound per year of muscle after the age of 35. Now, after breast cancer, that quarter of a pound, you actually lose an extra quarter of a pound. So you lose half a pound of muscle um, in your arms and legs after a year of not lifting weights after breast cancer. I hope that this makes sense. Okay, so meaning that the women who go through breast cancer treatment, they lose muscle mass in their arms and legs much faster than the general population. That's almost like twice the speed, essentially. Maybe more, unless my math is off, which might be. But regardless, the numbers are correct here. You instead of losing a quarter of a pound, you're actually losing about half a pound of muscle in your arms and legs, which is approximately double the observation rate. Oh, I was right. Loss per year among women without cancer. Exactly what I just said. In contrast, the decline in the weightlifting group over the 12 months, okay, was 0.02 kilograms. Okay, so it was kilograms for the charts, 0.02 kilograms. So then that's 2.2 because that's about the conversion rate. So that's not even a quarter of a pound. That's only like 0.05%. Oh, wow. They actually did the little math here for me. So they didn't lose much muscle. In fact, they basically maintained muscle mass, which is, I take back everything I said. On their arms and legs, that is a significant difference because they went from losing half a pound of muscle to losing 0.05 pounds of muscle on their arms and legs. That is a huge difference, clinically significant, statistically significant, huge difference. So the women essentially maintained muscle mass. Our findings support the hypothesis that treatments for cancer may accelerate the loss of skeletal muscle mass on their arms and legs, and to reinforce the importance of identifying interventions that attenuate the decline loss of muscle mass among breast cancer survivors. Basically, lift weights. If you lift weights, even on a poorly designed, like not muscle building protocol, I'm not saying that the protocol itself was poorly designed. I am saying that it was not a muscle building protocol. You can actually still maintain muscle mass and not lose muscle after a year of training, which is incredible. To put this in perspective, my online coaching clients built about 2 pounds of muscle in give or take 6 months. 2 pounds of muscle being built. Now, this is somebody who was in their 60s. This is somebody who um, was actually taking endocrine therapy, stage 3 breast cancer survivor in her 60s, was able to build 2 pounds of muscle in 6 months. So that's kind of the differences that you can see in terms of weightlifting and progress and programming and things like that. Now, anyways, the muscle mass is associated with a variety of health outcomes that may be important to breast cancer survivors. Low muscle mass is associated with increased risk of all-cause mortality amongst breast cancer survivors. Uh, low. Every time I say muscle mass, by the way, I don't know if you've already picked this up, but it's associated with arms and legs muscle mass. So the more muscle mass you lose in your arms and legs, the higher the increased risk of all-cause mortality, meaning anything that can cause higher risk of earlier death, such as diabetes, heart disease, cancer, frailty, breaking a bone, things like that. Skeletal muscle mass in your arms and legs also has endocrine effects, such as low levels of muscle mass are associated with higher levels of fasting insulin. So low muscle means that your insulin increases, which increases your risk for a second cancer, but also heart disease and also diabetes. This is important because high levels of fasting insulin associated with an increased risk of cancer recurrence, which is what I said earlier, and death among women diagnosed with early stage breast cancer. So even if you are an early stage breast cancer survivor, meaning maybe it's a stage 0 or a stage 1 breast cancer survivor, and you have low muscle mass on your arms and legs, you actually have an increased risk of a second cancer. It's also associated with frailty, disability, bone mineral loss. Frailty occurs at an earlier age in breast cancer survivors compared to non-cancer controls. Disability is more prevalent among breast cancer survivors than non-breast cancer survivors and exert a negative impact on overall self-reported health. Bone mineral density among breast cancer survivors is often lowered compared to healthy controls. So your risk of osteoporosis, osteopenia, breaking a bone leading to earlier death is a lot higher when you have less muscle mass on your arms and legs. So do those bicep curls, ladies. Collectively, this data suggests that at stopping or declining loss of muscle mass through the use of weightlifting may be favorable influence clinically meaning outcomes among breast cancer survivors. This hypothesis warrants confirmation in large trials designed to examine the effects of weightlifting on clinical endpoints among breast cancer survivors. This is amazing. So I'm so sorry. I do take it back. I did not fully realize the differences there. I kept thinking about full body muscle mass, and every time I said it, instead of focusing only on the arms, and I didn't make the connection between kilograms and pounds because I'm in the US and we don't use kilograms, so I was messing that up completely. But just to make this point clear, a change in loss of muscle mass from 0.05 to half a pound is a huge difference, and that is clinically significant. Okay. Other randomized studies have examined the effects of weightlifting on body composition outcomes among breast cancer survivors. To our knowledge, our study is the first to demonstrate the efficacy of weightlifting to decline loss of muscle mass in weight cancer survivors. Weightlifting may decrease body fat percentage and fat mass without alternating total body mass among breast cancer survivors. So it's basically saying that, like, if you gain 1 pound of muscle and you lost 1 pound of fat, your weight would essentially be the same. We did not observe any changes in body mass, total body mass, body fat percentage. So they didn't see any changes in body fat. To put it in perspective, for my online coaching client, she gained 2 pounds of muscle and lost 1 pound of fat in 6 months. Now, given I did not have her in a calorie deficit, which they also mention here, so the fact that she lost a pound of fat and gained 2 pounds of muscle is huge. I think she lost like 2 pant sizes, essentially. There are several weaknesses to the analysis. Which every trial is going to have some weaknesses here. Not that big of a deal. And then there are several strengths, which they always mentioned. They did have really good diversity, which is awesome. And let's see, did they say anything else? It was for a full year of weightlifting. So this is awesome. This is great to see how weightlifting can actually help stop muscle mass in the arms and legs, which makes a huge difference for long-term health, independence, being able to pick up your kids, being able to pick up your grandkids. When you think about the next 10 years of life, what do you want those next 10 to 20 years of life to be? Do you want to live another 10 to 20 years? Do you want it to look like? What does that even mean? Is your kid going to be graduating college? Is your grandkids going to be going to high school? Are you going to have a 10-year-old? Whatever that means for you, what does that number of years mean for your life? And how do you want to live that? Do you want to be able to take them to recess? Do you want to be able to play with them? Do you want to be able to pick up your kids, your grandkids? I know I've mentioned this so many times, but really take time to think about what your future is going to look like and see how meaningful that future is for you and what it takes to get there, because you do have the tools disposable to you to build muscle, exercise, live a healthy life. It is possible, even though this study did not show an increase in muscle mass, it is possible to increase muscle. It is possible to lose fat. It is possible to get healthier. It is possible to lower fatigue and live the life that you want to live even after cancer. It does take some guidance. It does take some patience. But it is possible, and I don't want you to give up hope on that. If you do want to learn how to build muscle, how to get stronger, what are the exercises that you need to do, how to do the exercises. I have a full free guide on the description below that you can access today and you can get for free. This does not cost you anything. This is an absolutely free guide that will come directly to your email, and you have a 12-week exercise program. You're going to know exactly how many reps, how many sets, what exercises to do. And it's going to help you start building on muscle, start fighting disease the right way, and give you peace of mind and better, um, more confidence in your body and in your ability to do things physically. So if you're tired of just feeling tired, or tired of feeling like you're 20 years older, which is true, there is an aging effect of cancer. Go ahead and click that link below. Get my free guide today. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I'm JC. I'm a clinical exercise physiologist and a cancer exercise specialist. If you ever have any questions, go ahead and leave them on the link below. And happy you stay tuned to listen. Take care.